Hey guys, welcome to our last flipped video lesson here in Unit 2. What we're going to do here in Target 4 is very similar to what we did in Target 2. We're going to be taking our inequalities and we're going to be working on our communication, our language, translating, interpreting, all of that good stuff. So let's dive right in here. Hopefully this list looks familiar. If you remember back in the Target 2 lesson, with no sound, of course, I did tell you to write all of these phrases down. And again, if any of these phrases are not familiar to you, if you know from the quiz, you remember, oh yeah, that one didn't go so well. Please, please, please make sure you write it down, make sure you work on it, make sure we get that locked down in the memory, because with our inequalities, we're still going to be using all of this expression language when we are describing, when we're translating, when we're interpreting. Alright, so if you need to, pause the video screen, take your time with them, make sure you got these locked down. Alright, so we have the expression language, but just like with equations and an equal sign, we need to know a little bit more with inequalities, right? We need to have language for our inequality symbols. Now, 4 of these we should be pretty familiar with at this point, kind of the 4 basic inequality phrases. Is greater than, is less than, is greater than or equal to, is less than or equal to, right? And we know those symbols, we've been working with those, and we've been using that language. But there are some other phrases that still imply an inequality sign, but aren't as familiar to us as probably these 4 basic ones. So let's take a look at some of these other ones here. Is at most, is at least, is between, is more than. So these can all be phrases referring to inequality. So let's take a look here. You can see is at most is actually referring to less than or equal to. Is at least is referring to greater than or equal to. Those are 2 that are easy to mix up, and we'll work on using those and talk about those more later. If we say something is between 2 numbers, what we're essentially saying is what's in between is greater than one side, but less than the other. So we're creating 2 inequality signs there with just one phrase. And then the last one is more than, is very similar to is greater than. It's just greater than there. Now, one thing to notice here is that we have the word is in front of all of our inequality language. If you'll remember from the list just on the previous slide, the word less than, it could mean subtraction as well. Greater than can mean addition. But when we put the word is in front of greater than, less than, more than, that now changes the meaning of the phrase to be talking specifically about our inequality symbols. Alright? Remember that, because we're going to have phrases that have both less than, just less than, and phrases that have is less than. We've got to make sure we know when we're talking about an operation versus an inequality symbol. Alright, well, let's dive right in then here. So what we want you to do is pause the video and give these your best shot to take these sentences and translate them into inequalities with numbers, variables, and symbols. Ready? Pause. Alright, let's see how you did. For the first one, did you get 7 times the sum, parentheses, of a number, x, and 9 is greater than negative 43? Hopefully you did. If you didn't, please make sure you mark it down and come to class with questions. Let's take a look at the second one here. Now, here's where we see the phrase is at most in play here. So when we say 8 times the number is at most, we're actually saying whatever we just did first is less than what comes afterwards. Because when we're saying the words at most, we're actually talking about a maximum that everything else has to be below. So everything has to be that maximum or less. Let's look at the last one here. Alright, now in this last one, we use the words is between. So what we say first is between, meaning it's in the middle, bigger than negative 7, but less than 13. Alright, if you have any questions on these, please make sure you mark them down, come to class with those questions. Alright, so now we're going to go the other direction. We have an inequality. We want you to turn that into a sentence. So go ahead, pause the video and try these now. Ready? Pause. Alright, let's see how you did here. Right? Read these sentences over. See if what you have is similar to what we have. Once again, same with equations. You can have something worded slightly differently than us and still have a sentence that very accurately describes the inequality and would be totally correct in a test or a quiz. And again, I know I've said this over and over again, but if you got any questions, mark them down, come to class. So let's dive right into the second half of this target, where we are now not translating, but we are interpreting. And this is very similar to what we did with our equations, where we're going to be given information in the context of a situation, and we're going to be expected to define variables to be able to put the information together in an equation to represent our solution to answer questions. So let's look at the first one here. He-Man is 50 years old. If you don't know who He-Man and She-Ra are, you know, they're literally twice as old as you are. So they were you know, what was cool back in the day when I was a kid in cartoons. In 5 years, She-Ra, really creative names there, will be at most half of He-Man's age. What are the possible ages She-Ra could be? Well, if we look at this, what we can see is what we're trying to figure out is She-Ra's age. So that's going to be our variable. That's going to be our x. Now, when we look at this, we can say in 5 years. So if we add 5 years to She-Ra's age, she will be at most, right? At most is less than or equal to half of He-Man's age. Well, they already told us He-Man's age was 50, so half of that is 25. So x plus 5 is less than or equal to 25. Would allow us to have an inequality to find the possible ages for She-Ra. Let's look at the second one here. Alyssa saw a sign which said, free iPod if you collect at least 500 pieces of used gum. That sounds like a deal, but you know, an iPod's an iPod. So, if the number of pieces of gum Alyssa's collected is 7x minus 3, write any inequality, or an inequality, probably a typo there, and solve to find the smallest value x could be, and Alyssa still get her iPod. Now notice, she needs to collect at least 500 pieces. So when we look at this, I'm sorry, I should have said that above. Also, you could have written that as 2 times x plus 5 is less than or equal to 50. So let's get back here. So 7x minus 3 is our number of pieces. So what we know is the number of pieces, 7x minus 3, has to be at least greater than or equal to 500. So now we have an inequality that we could solve for x, and we would be able to find the minimum value for x that would allow Alyssa to get her 500 pieces of gum. Alright, so let's have 2 more here that you try on your own. So we want you to pause the video and then see if you can come up with an inequality that would represent both of these situations and answer the question. Ready, pause. Alright, let's see how you did. Did we get 3x plus 6 is less than or equal to 42, and 7x plus 55 is greater than or equal to 104? Hopefully you did. One last time, if you didn't and you're not sure why, write it down, come to class, and we'll talk about it. Well, that brings us to the end of our last lesson. I know, tear, it's sad. But don't worry, we'll have plenty of time to learn more math together in class. We'll talk to you then.